Murder mystery. To this day, it remains unsolved. What happened to 8-year-old Buddy Schumacher way back in 1925? He went for a swim, but he never made it home. Author Paul Hoffman has spent years tirelessly digging through dusty records and newspaper clippings, interviewing anyone who might know something, and he has put together this fascinating book about the Buddy Schumacher murder. Take us back to 1925. Set the scene for us. What happened with Buddy?
Well, in 1925, Wauwatosa was a lot different than it is today. It was much more separated from Milwaukee than it is today. It was almost like its own little town that wasn't, just kind of out there in the middle of nowhere almost. You had the Menominee River running through with all these jungles, they called them, reeds, impenetrable along the river. A lot of homeless people who would come in on the rails, on the road. New roads are being built, and it's a little easier to move around the country.
And that's the area where the body was found.
And that's the area where Buddy was going and where the body was found. Yeah.
You begin this book with a quote from a neighbor saying, "I know who killed Buddy," but you don't give away too much. Is there anyone alive, you think, today who knows what happened?
There might be. I don't think there's anybody alive now who was alive back then and knew, but there may have been people who had talked about it with their sons, maybe some of the police officers or the DA who maybe talked about it with some people, and those people maybe have an idea, trying to figure out who those people are and get a hold of them and try to get them to talk about it. Especially if they weren't directly involved at the time, is a little difficult.
Well, there's a lot of research here. It took a lot of work. Why the personal fascination with this case? And it is a fascinating case.
Well, my initial introduction to this was when I grew up on Hillcrest Drive in Wauwatosa. Next door neighbor lady would say, "I know who killed the Schumacher boy." And it kind of freaked me out a little bit at the time. I'm like 10 years old, and I don't want to know any more about this. I'm just walking away. But she knew that the people who sold us our house that I grew up in were the Schumachers. Art Schumacher had bought that house about 2 years after Buddy died. So Buddy's father sold my father the house that we grew up in.
Oh, interesting. So Art Schumacher, the man we see here in the picture, that's Buddy's dad.
Right.
And he sold your dad the house that you grew up in.
Right.
And that was the original introduction to this. What was the most interesting discovery you came across in all your research with this?
Well, some of the most interesting things were the twists and turns that happened in the investigation. Eyewitnesses plugged one guy with having been the last person they saw with Buddy before he disappeared. And a couple of days later, maybe a week later, they changed their mind and said, "No, well, we're not really sure that's the guy." Buddy was killed with a handkerchief had been stuffed down his throat. And a lady in town said, "Well, I recognize that handkerchief. It was one that I was going to wash for a homeless man." And they called them tramps and hobos back then.
Sure.
And, but about a week later, she changed her mind. She said, I'm not sure that that's it. And they finally had to let this guy go. Edward Vreeland was the guy they had in for molesting boys around the old swimming hole, which is really close to where the Hoyt Park pool is now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So he was the prime suspect, but they couldn't get the evidence, and we will never know then, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, and evidence went missing too.
Yeah.
They, in the DA's office, they had the handkerchief and Buddy's clothes, and they went missing for 3 days and magically appeared again.
The book is called Murder in Wauwatosa: The Mysterious Death of Buddy Schumacher. It's by Paul Hoffman, who has a personal connection with this whole story, as we found out. Paul, thank you very much. There's information, by the way, on getting this book on fox6now.com on the links section. Where else could people pick this book up?
It's at the Barnes & Nobles. It's on Amazon.com. It's available on Nook and Kindle and all those places.
And congratulations on your first book. That's
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. We will be right back. We're going to head outside.